Los Angeles, I'm in most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of your six-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, February 17th. The LA Galaxy wrapping up Coachella, getting ready. In fact, training today back at Dignity Health Sports Park. That means it is time. Game week number one. The LA Galaxy MLS Cup defending champions will take on the San Diego, the newcomers in San Diego on Sunday. So we'll talk a little bit about Coachella, where everybody thinks the LA Galaxy are going to finish, and of course, where we think the LA Galaxy are going to succeed or fail this season. In order to help me do all that, we're glad to have him back with us. It's the Panda himself, Mr. Kevin Baxter. Kev, how you doing, bud?
Hey, that was a new open, new audio.
No,
and
it's not. I just hit the wrong button, but after having all the audio problems that we had just getting to the show and starting this, I'm just happy there's music and people can hear us.
well, for those of you watching, there's two graphics. One said season 16 and one said season 17, which was interesting because I don't really believe this show starts season 17 until after the first game, right?
No, I mean, I'm in
16 and a half. 16 and a half would be right.
It's 17. I mean, this is 17
Okay.
right now. Trust me. I am deep in 17 as we go forward. I am ready, rocking, ready to go.
I don't think I've been on quite half them. I think I started, 8 years ago?
I can't remember. I keep wanting to sort of do that, is go back and check to see when you actually started. But it's been a very long time. You, outside of me, you are, I believe, in second place in most show appearances. Yes, I know, right?
And by the way, you keep talking on social media about how are we done with Coachella? Can we put Coachella behind us? I cannot put Coachella behind us, and I'll tell you why.
Right.
Because I came back from Coachella with a souvenir, a badly injured left ring finger. And I'll tell you what happened. I was out there 3 different days. And the first day I was out there, I was walking around and I noticed LAFC was playing. And I was, people don't realize that we sit in the highest, probably the highest part in the stadium. We're farthest away from the field of just about anybody. And so the game looks very different from up there. It looks slower. It looks less physical. And when you get down on the field like we were at Coachella, it's a totally different game. So anyway, I'm walking around and I notice I'm behind a goal and Hugo Lloris is playing goal for LAFC. And I thought, here's one of the greatest goalkeepers in soccer history. And I can just stand behind the goal right here and watch him play. And it was fascinating. You hear him yelling to the defenders and setting everything up. And so when I came back then on the weekend, I was going to a San Diego FC game, kind of scouting them, help Greg out a little bit. And so I was going to scout them, and I was behind the net, and guys were firing on goal. And I was standing there, and balls were, sailing over the net and just past me. And as one came near me, I thought, you know what? I'm going to stick my hand up, see if I can catch it.
That's a bad idea.
Kids, girls and boys out there, listen to your Uncle Panda when he tells you don't ever do that. First of all, the ball was hit about 900 miles an hour at least. And then I don't know how many people know this. I'm sure the people that sit in the Victoria block know this. Those balls curve and they move every which way. It's like a knuckleball on a windy day, only going really fast. And so I stuck my hand up and it just nailed me. And of course I didn't catch it. The ball kept going, took my finger with it basically. And, so yeah, it still hurt more than a week later. I'm still suffering. It's still very painful. And I have a new perspective and a new appreciation for goalkeepers. For me, every save is a miracle.
And Kevin
I don't
Baxter.
know how they do it.
Kevin Baxter starts the season on the injured list, huh? All right,
He does.
you and Joseph Paintsil, right? That's how it goes.
Riqui and I go to the same rehab guy.
That's I'm sure that's what it is. You two are out there. He's with your ACL and you're doing little finger. Ow! It hurts to move my finger. Yeah, I know.
Ow!
No, it is. It's if anytime you get down close to the field, and that's why at least Kevin, that's why I certainly look at it and say, you should go to Coachella, so way you can get up close and you get to see things moving a little faster and that type of thing. Not only that, but there's a good pump on those balls. Like the game balls and the things they play, those are not like, a little softer. I don't know how people don't die when they head the ball sometimes. Having played soccer,
and you see guys get hit in the face with a shot, like just an errant shot hits some guy in the face and he just keeps running down the field. I mean, that's gotta hurt.
Yeah, no, it's a dangerous game. Things are flying around. There's all sorts of stuff. It's a fun place to sort of be and sort of look at and do, but you sort of get the idea. And then you realize, and I'm going to say this, if you watched any of these teams in preseason, Kevin, not one of those teams was going 100%. So they're at like 90% top, right? Like, in preseason, you're just never probably getting to that max level. You watching these guys sort of get in there and they're still not even playing at 100%. I've told you the one time I've been on a field during a game, during an MLS soccer game. This is a true story. You know the story. I've told the story, right? Do you remember this off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, but maybe in the deep recesses of my mind. I might remember it.
You will remember this. Is back in the day, in like probably 2010 or something like that, MLS got this great idea that season ticket members, and certainly at the LA Galaxy thought this was a good idea, for I think 2 whole games. So this was a short-lived program. That season ticket members could go out onto the field as part of the stretcher crew. You could be on the stretcher crew, right? And so it was.
Wow.
So I was a stretcher crew person. My buddy Chad, who now lives up in Seattle, he was a stretcher crew with me. I took him with me. We were like the first season ticket members to get the chance for this, right? Because they were like, we'll let Josh do it because of the whole deal. So literally the training for this is, okay, here's the stretcher, and like if they call you out there, go run out there. That was it, like the whole deal. So it was an LA Galaxy Chivas USA game, so a derby game back in the day. And so we sat on the sidelines most of the whole game. Nobody ever got hurt. Nobody ever went down. Nobody thing until the second half. A Chivas USA player went down on the far side of the field. So we had to run across. I was on the field during a game. Weird, super weird feeling to be on the field during a game, in the center of the field during a game. The place is a lot bigger than you think it is whenever, like, and I've been on the field when it's empty, but with people in it. So we ran across there. And of course, as we got there, the dude jumped up, right? I don't even remember who it was. So they jumped up and then they were like, the referees were like, you guys can go off this way. So they pushed us off on the other side of the field. So then we had to make our way all the way back. Well, then the ball kind of got jumped over towards our side. So we couldn't go behind the goal. We had to wait. And so by the time we got back, I think it was like 12 minutes after the injury had hit and we finally got there. And that was my one claim to fame. I've been on the field. I've seen it up close. I've seen the guys hit each other from the field level and being right there. And it is a crazy, crazy experience. But by the way, I said that lasted like 2 whole games and they decided maybe that wasn't the smartest thing in the world. So you ended it. From the field at Dodger Stadium, the upper decks look way bigger and way more intimidating. And you talk about not understanding the game because you're not up close. When I was covering the Marlins, we had a couple of pitchers, Josh Beckett and AJ Burnett, that were hurt. And so they did what's called a simulated game where they pitch against live hitters and they use all their stuff and see if they can spin the curveballs and all that. And you get to stand behind the plate, behind the backstop to watch that. Right.
And again, we're not in the press box. I don't know how any major league player ever gets the bat on the ball. So those curveballs, they just literally disappear, and the fastballs, you can't even see them. And it used to be, I think they still do it in places like the Coliseum, older stadiums.
Right.
In football, because the only way down to the locker rooms is through the stands. They take you down on the field for like the last 5 minutes, 7 minutes of the game, so you don't have to go through the crowd. And that's another thing that's different. You see it from the field and you go, oh, those guys they're not hitting that hard. And you go down the field and you can hear it. It's totally different. Maybe Tom Brown will give me a photo pass or something, so I go on the game. I go on the field for a game.
Is a panda anywhere near the field.
Exactly.
No, it's always great. I always think getting the my one thing is, if you ever wanted to get up on the glass, like for hockey games, if you ever watch a hockey game by the glass,
Yes.
that's a blast. By the way, last minute tickets, sometimes you can score those for, if you're by yourself, for like $60 or something like that, and you could just go sit in especially the single seat that's between all these other ones. Nobody can sell it, so like they'll give it away for $60. I used to do that for Ducks games, that type of thing. So, but yeah, it's a lot of different. But yeah, that's the Coachella Valley Invitational experience. And I know, and I saw the crowds, the swarms of people out there on Saturday. I was very impressed with the crowd that went out to see the LA Galaxy. But LA Galaxy lose their final game of Coachella 1-0 to Chicago. If you watch the game, I don't know that you're necessarily concerned, but I think there are some concerning things that it's certainly you're going to have to watch, right? We're seeing it sort of echoed within MLS. We're seeing it echoed within, people watching Coachella, people watching the league, that the LA Galaxy, if they were the same team that just won MLS Cup and they took everybody over, would be clear number one favorites probably to repeat. I don't even think there would be a question on it. As it is, people are picking them pretty high in the Western Conference because they think the core is still there. But because they're missing Riqui, who's going to be out for a considerable part of the season, because right now, even starting the season, Joseph Paintsil is out, you realize they're sort of relying on some guys that we don't have the answers to. And if you think about it similarly to last year in the Coachella, we didn't know a lot about Joseph Paintsil. We didn't know a lot about Gabriel Pec, right? And so the answers weren't there in Coachella. We had to wait for the season to start to get those answers. And that's sort of, I think that's where we are right now, because there are questions about a bunch of different parts of this LA Galaxy team, how they were able to rebuild themselves that way they will be, quote unquote, a contender, and whether or not they're going to hit on the signings that they made. And possibly the last signing that we're still waiting for. By the way, super chat from Football Mania, $2 super chat, said Coachella was fun. Can confirm Kevin was injured on the play. So somebody saw you get injured on the play. Congratulations. Did you roll around on the ground? You're like,
No,
medic,
I didn't.
Medic.
I must have talked to this guy because I don't even remember reacting as if it was one of those things where I'd hurt so bad you kind of like go, I'm really hurt. God, it hurts.
I just saw like an Instagram story or reel or something, and they're showing how guys, like whenever they get hurt, they go, I'm fine, right? That you can hop up and like literally like their arm's broken and there's a bone sticking out. You're like, it's fine, I'm okay.
Yeah.
That's
I'll just screw the finger back on. It's okay.
It's okay. You don't need it. Well, so some interesting time. Just to give everybody a heads up, because this is what we're approaching. I haven't got to do one of these in a little bit, but here's your LA Galaxy schedule, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. The LA Galaxy start on 2/23. It's the game against San Diego. We all know that one. That one's coming up. Away to Vancouver then to start March, right, on March 2nd. And then it's going to be the LA Galaxy home to St. Louis, away to Portland. You have the game that is going to be away to Minnesota. And then the LA Galaxy will be home to Orlando. The problem is there are also 2 CONCACAF Champions Cup games that are in there as well. So that makes 7 games in total in March for a team that right now seems a little thin on the edges, on the margins.
And we don't know who those CONCACAF Champions Cup games are going to be against.
No, we actually, we do know who they're going to be against. We just don't know which of the 2 teams that it's going to be. So we do know the actual pairing for the LA Galaxy. And if you are paying attention and you want to watch those games, these games are going to start tomorrow. Actually, it's February 18th. Whenever you have Colorado and LAFC playing in Colorado in a very cold game, you have Herediano and Salt Lake. So that's in Costa Rica for this first game, February 19th. That is the winner of that matchup is the team the LA Galaxy will play. I think if you're looking for travel arrangements, the easier of those would be Salt Lake. But having said that, that's also not an easy way to go.
But I bet you both those teams are ecstatic that they're not playing that game in Utah because that cold front going through. It's going to snow could snow on the Colorado LAFC game. The Kansas City Miami game's already been moved back a day by inclement weather. So by getting that first game in Costa Rica, that's a real break for both those teams.
Yeah, it seems to be. So so we're sort of watching those as we go, but we do know as LA Galaxy watchers here that you're going to be wanting to watch that matchup. And then you have Sporting Kansas City and Inter Miami, which you said gets moved back a day. You have Antigua and Seattle, Motagua and Cincinnati and Saprissa and Vancouver. There are 10 MLS teams in this CONCACAF Champions Cup. So a lot of fun to sort of watch. Columbus is, I think, the only team that's not mentioned. Columbus and the LA Galaxy on this one are the ones that are not mentioned because they both get passes to the next round. So that's where you can. If you're looking for it in English, FS2 seems to be where all the games will be. TUDN Let's see, you have Fox, you have VIX, you have Unamas, Univision, Tubi is on there as well. So just keep your eyes open for where you can try to find these games, because it's not going to be on the MLS app. That's for sure.
Yeah, this could be really interesting, and it's a front-loaded schedule for the Galaxy. Well, for LAFC too, but it's interesting for the Galaxy because they're not going to have Riqui Puig at all for Champions Cup. Even if they go to the final, he is not going to play.
Right.
We don't know. Paintsil may not come in until the round of 16 or maybe even the quarterfinals.
Which means the Galaxy would have to advance past their first round, and I think that's a real question right now. And maybe we should turn it back and look a little bit at Coachella, because I think this is our learning sort of curve. Here's the big takeaways as we look at the LA Galaxy. 1-0 loss to Chicago. I will say this, Chicago's goalkeeper played very well. Probably kept 2 or 3 goals out. That being said, the LA Galaxy defense, trying to play out of the back, gave up the 1 goal that Chicago did score. So, I don't think Chicago generated a ton of chances. I will also say, in general, I think CVI is a wonderful tournament and everything happens and it's great. They added the TV component this year, which I thought was great. However, the execution of that TV component needs some work.
A lot of work.
Yeah, there was. I have been having not too many issues watching on YouTube TV and being able to get that channel, but there were several times where the signal just cut out in the middle of the game and it paused and, all that stuff. So the infrastructure, however you're doing that, it was one of the reasons that we were having trouble trying to do a live show there as well, just trying to broadcast it live. And next year, God willing, if they invite us back again, I think we have a plan on how to do that. So we might be able to get to test that out throughout the year, but there's a different plan. I was working with our sound guy, our sound technician.
Oh yeah, the Taylor Swift sound guy.
Yeah, trust me. He works over at Cal State Fullerton though, so you're a fan, right?
Taylor probably go there.
Maybe, but we were talking about it. And I think we came up with a plan.
Well, we also had the problem. We need goggles for our hosts now who put a suntan lotion in their eyes on occasion.
Dude, it was so bad. This is what happens when my wife is around. She makes me wear too much suntan lotion, and then I just get lazy with it, and I just try to use the spray. And if you know no pain, like the spray suntan lotion that eventually, not right away, you don't get it in your eyes right away, you're fine for 2 hours, 3 hours, you're fine. The third hour, all of a sudden, you start to get this like little tingle in your eye, and you're like, "What's that?" And then it gets worse, and the burning goes. You can't even see, So
well, it was funny because I tried to wave Alex on. I thought Mighty Mouse would come on and do a segment, and you were like, "No," and I thought, "Oh my God, is Josh and Alex fighting? What's going on?"
No.
And then you said, "No, I can't do it anymore. I got suntan."
Yeah, also
lotion in my
our
eyes.
time limit. It was time for us to go. That was also the whole thing. One of these days, you'll have to realize somebody pays attention to the time, knows who the guests are, schedules a lot, and one guy should just follow the other guy's lead. One guy should just follow the other guy's lead. Also, from the Coachella live show, because we haven't talked about it, Will Kuntz said some amazingly nice things about us, and especially his mother-in-law. I believe, is it Emily? Did I remember correctly? Because he said it on the show. But that she's a fan of this show, and I refuse to believe that because I feel like she's much too smart, having raised Will, or having raised Will's wife, and that she thinks that Will's probably this really great guy. Why would she be coming to us for any sort of information when she has Will Kuntz to be able to answer those questions for us?
Did I tell you the story about that? Will had told me that earlier. I don't know if I mentioned on this show, but I saw Will the first day at Coachella, and we were talking, and he said that, they're at a great hotel. They're at the La Quinta Resort because they're the host team, so they get the best hotel. It's an amazing hotel. My wife used to put on golf tournaments, and she stayed there, and she told me stories about it. It's an amazing hotel. And Will called her mother-in-law and said, "Can you come out to Coachella? It's beautiful. I know it's raining in LA. It's beautiful here. We'll get you a great room at the hotel." And she said, "No, I really don't want to come." And Will then kind of confessed that he was hoping to get maybe the kids to come, and he'd have some nanny help with the mother-in-law. But she said, no. Everything he tried, he couldn't get her to come. And then finally he said, "If you come on the weekend, Kevin and Josh are going to be here." And she was like, "Oh, well, then maybe I'll come out." Apparently she didn't make it, but we were the ones that made her consider it.
There's zero chance that story is true. Zero chance. Will's great.
You calling Will a liar?
I'm just saying that there is nobody in their right mind that would choose to go out to Coachella. Again, the sources of information that we have are so inferior to the sources of information she has at her fingertips. I love her to death. If that's true, she's my number one fan. You were my number one fan, Kevin. Before she's my number one fan by far. But I would like to say that there's zero chance that it works. There was Debbie goes by the way she thinks that the Galaxy should play on field 2 so that way fans don't have to look in the sun. That's a good one. I was down on the end line. It's always bright there. It's like the sun always shines in the desert or something. It's weird. But no,
there's a lot of long trains out there too. Speaking of trains, long trains.
Nobody was talking about trains, but I'm glad you brought it up. There's long snakes of trains going out across the desert. That's where they can use that speed, man. One of the most efficient ways to carry cargo across the United States. I'm just going to say it. Just in case anybody else wanted to argue, one of the most efficient ways. But no, Coachella was awesome. The Galaxy were extremely nice to us. I talked about it a little bit on Thursday. The closest I've ever got to Phil Anschutz was there. That was it. He was about 10 feet away from us. That was
yes.
Yes.
We tried to get Phil on the show. People should know this. We tried to get Phil on the show. We invited him. We asked Dan Beckerman.
Don't ask like that was serious.
No, wait a minute. We tried to get him on the show, and they said Phil actually Dan Beckerman kind of laughed and said he would check with Phil and see if he was interested.
Right.
And then I thought we were going to have Cosmo.
Right.
And then I learned that both Phil Anschutz and Cosmo both left the facility at halftime, and it got me thinking.
Right.
Have you ever seen Phil and Cosmo in the same place at the same time? I think they're one and the same. I think Phil is Cosmo.
You mean all these years Phil Anschutz is Cosmo? It could be, 100%.
I mean, think about it. It saves money. He's all about the bottom line. He's kind of small. Getting out of costume, I think it would work.
Yeah, perhaps it would, but no. The closest we've ever seen to at least for me to Phil Anschutz was at Coachella. So a great time. Back to the Galaxy now.
Do we have to?
Yeah, we have to. Eventually, there has to be soccer talk on the soccer podcast. That's how it works. I think there are some concerns. Let's talk about the starting lineup just because this gives us a good idea, I think, where Greg Vanney is going. I do not expect I have no notes on the starting lineup in terms of I think things are going to change. Could they change? Yes. I don't think they're going to. And here's the big one that everybody has sort of been, asking for and guessing and everything else. And we've been talking about it. It's Novak Mitrovic. Mitrovic has spent all the time in the preseason, Kevin, with the first team. We know what the first team looks like. Everybody knows what the first team looks like. Greg Vanney calls it first team whenever he's talking about it. Everybody knows what the first team lineup usually consists of, and Novak Mitrovic is in that starting lineup. He is the number one goalkeeper right now for the LA Galaxy. So take your depth charts, switch them around. Novak Mitrovic, John McCarthy. Here's my question, and my only question. If Mitrovic struggles for a little bit, if he has some dips, if he has some problems, if the LA Galaxy right now as they're consistent of, I don't know how consistent they're going to be to start the season. So if Novak Mitrovic hits some rough road, does John McCarthy come in to play savior on this? And is John McCarthy okay playing that? Does John McCarthy stay on this team? Like all of these things I have questions about now because really, what did John McCarthy do last year to get himself not included as the number one this year? Just went out and won an MLS Cup, was extremely solid down the line. I get the arguments, and I think that they're fair critiques of him sometimes, that his distribution isn't the best. Sometimes in the games in the middle of the season, maybe he didn't play the way that everybody thought he was going to play, Kevin. But whenever the rubber hit the road, John McCarthy was there and helped the LA Galaxy hoist an MLS Cup. I understand why the Galaxy are going to Mitrovic. I get the arguments, the whole deal. I'm just wondering what that dynamic does. And we talked about a really good locker room dynamic last year. Mitrovic was upset there during the middle of the season there where he didn't show up for training and then got suspended for a game and all sorts of fun stuff. So there was some of that. But my whole argument here is if you have Mitrovic as the number one and say the LA Galaxy struggle to get off the blocks anymore, is there going to be a call for John McCarthy to come back in?
Well, I think there's a chance there's going to be a goalkeeper controversy. Yeah. And Mikovic was supposed to come in and play quite a bit last season. Greg Vanney told me that at the beginning of the year that John McCarthy is going to be the starter, but that Mikovic is going to come in and play quite a bit. And that he expected them almost to be sharing time at the end of the season. I think Mikovic shot himself in the foot with that sort of, I don't know what it was, temper tantrum or whatever. I think he cost himself playing time. I think John, McCarthy was playing so well that they just decided to ride the hot hand, which was smart. But I do think, with a young goalkeeper, I think the way to look at the first few games is, let's just say he gives up a number of goals, but they're bad goals. They're not goals that they're goals that he really wasn't at fault. And I think you got to give him a little bit of slack. But he's a young guy, and he's a young guy. You don't want to hurt his confidence. But at the same token, you don't want him to be back in the shooting gallery either. So we'll see how that goes. I think it's really going to test John McCarthy, a quality guy, like you said, a good dressing room guy. He's upset right now. We know he's not happy. He's frustrated. It's like, what do I have to do to keep my starting job? And he's been a journeyman, and so he thought he'd found a home. I mean, I think he knew last year he was going to share time and didn't. He thought that he had won the job. So it's really going to test his character. I think he's going to pass that test. I think he's a quality guy and a character guy, and I think he'll be okay. But when you put that starting lineup back up there, I think that's the starting lineup they go with to open the season. I think Nelson is probably going to be the starter. I definitely think Christian Ramirez starts up top. I think Nascimento obviously is going to be that guy, but he's only been in camp for about 10 days.
They haven't even announced him as a signing yet, so we can't even.
I think, and Ramirez has played well enough that there should be total confidence in him. I think he's done really well. I mean, that could be a problem if Ramirez continues to play well.
Wait, you think that Ramirez has played well so far? What about him do you think has played well? Listen, I'm not saying he's played poorly, but wouldn't you have liked to seen a forward put a ball in the back of the net during these games?
Well, I think he's, I thought he played well the game that we were at. I thought he had some good runs, and I thought it was just a question of trying to get on, trying to get some chemistry and understand. I mean, Pec and some of these guys he's playing with, Royce, these guys are world-class players. And Ramirez, not to say that Ramirez didn't play with world-class players, but I don't know that he's played with a lot of guys of that quality. And so it may take him a little bit of time, but I would put him over Barry. I think I'd put him over Miguel Barry and start him there.
Miguel Barry has, for all intents and purposes, scored 2 goals in the preseason, which Christian Ramirez has 0 goals. I would just listen. I'm not going to tell you that Ramirez doesn't start because he's clearly the starter. That's the answer. I'm just saying that if you watched the preseason, you would have liked to seen more goals scored. My question right now is who's going to score the goals? And I think that that's not a crazy thing to ask. I watched the LA Galaxy play all these preseason games, and a couple times you said, hey, look, they're scoring some goals, but look at the game where they scored. Tucker Lepley had 2 goals. I like Tucker Lepley. I think he's a good role player that could come off the bench, but he's not starting for you. He's not scoring. Miguel Barry scored 2 goals, even though they gave one to Gabriel Pec because Gabriel Pec knocked it whenever it was already 3/4 of the way over the line. I'm very against those types of goals. Let them roll in, that type of thing. But having said that, where was Gabriel Pec this preseason in scoring goals? Hasn't been scoring goals. And does Gabriel Pec suffer? Right now, I'm telling you, he is. Go back and watch that Chicago game. Watch them collapse 3 players onto Gabriel Pec. If Riqui, Puig, and Joseph Paintsil are on that field, 3 players aren't going over to collapse on Gabriel Pec. The Galaxy have an issue. Gabriel Pec is a good player, but he thrives in space. He can take one guy on. You saw him even in one of the craziest runs we've ever seen in the playoffs, where he goes and he dodges through 3 or 4 guys. Doesn't take on 3 or 4 guys at the same time. He'll dodge them one-on-one, so you have to give him space. My whole thing is, let's watch how the Galaxy tried to create space for him. And I'll tell you right now, I don't think Christian Ramirez has played well off of Pec yet. Ramirez had a chance to knock in a great pass cross by Yamane in Chicago, and he didn't put it in. I'm not saying these things are insurmountable. I also agree with Greg Vanney that most of the time in the preseason, you're worried about things that are not the offense, not putting balls in the back of the net, not trying to score those things. But if you're talking about legitimate things that we have not seen from Coachella, it's scoring goals. Where was the offense?
Well, yeah, I think they're struggling to adjust with playing without Riqui. I mean, I think Ricky's been the guy that runs that offense, and I think they're struggling without him. I was interested to see Julian Aude not in that starting lineup. And again, I think Nelson probably going to start in the starting lineup for the season opener. Audi's right there. Maybe they can mix and match. I think Nascimento, as I said, Mateus Nascimento is going to be the striker eventually. But I think
next
Ramirez
year.
I think.
Oh no,
soon.
Nope.
You don't think so?
Nope.
You think Ramirez is your guy for all season? I don't think Ramirez
you're getting
starts
a 20-year-old striker who hasn't played a ton recently. So this is a development project. Did you see Dejan Joveljic start right away? No, he was behind Chicharito, right? And even when
Chicharito's not on this team, I don't think Christian Ramirez is Chicharito. I think Christian Ramirez is the backup guy.
I think Christian Ramirez probably could score as many goals as Chicharito did in his LA Galaxy career. I wouldn't say that Chicharito was real high on the offensive list there. He had one good season, and that was about it.
By the way, he cut all his hair off now.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna get there close. We're coming to that eventual decision.
But I think Ramirez is not. I think Nascimento winds up being the starter. I think Ramirez is the backup. But your question about where the goals come from, Pec, if you remember in the playoffs, especially the Seattle game, they did a great job of defending Pec, and that's why Dejan Joveljic scored 6 goals in the playoffs in 5 games, had a couple of assists. I don't think the Galaxy quite understand. I think intellectually they know they're going to miss Dejan Joveljic, but with Riqui being out especially, I don't know that they know quite just how much they're going to miss him. Fagundes is going to have to step up. Marco Royce is really going to have to step up until they get Paintsil and Riqui back, and Ricky's not coming back for a long time. So there's going to have to be some guys that are going to step up, because you're right. I mean, if you're an opposing team, the first thing you say is, don't let Gabriel Pec beat us. Yeah. Okay, Fagundes beats us, Royce beats us, whatever. Don't let Gabriel Pec beat us. And until Paintsil comes back, you're going to see like 6 defenders on that side of the field, and they're going to dare the other guys to score.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right on that. I think they're going to collapse on Pec, and you're going to need to find that. Now, that being said, we can point to some people here who have played absolutely out of their mind. Miki Amane is going to have himself a season. Let's predictions guaranteed to be wrong. Miki Amane for Defender of the Year for the LA Galaxy. Not only
by the way,
but
I did an interview with him.
Yeah.
I did an interview with him at the hotel. His first one-on-one interview in English.
Yeah, how was it?
Not good, but congratulations to him for trying. I mean, he insisted. They tried to get him a translator, and he said, "No, I'm going to do this in English." And it was interesting, and I appreciated him trying. But it shows, I think it actually does point what you were trying to say before I interrupted you, which is that he has now a lot of confidence and he's feeling comfortable here.
I would just like to 100% say that I think it's amazing that Miki Amane tries that. You couldn't pay me enough money to go try to speak Japanese to in Japan, right?
I didn't do it in Japanese, so yeah.
Yeah, 100%. No, there's only that. I just thought your reaction was not good. Like the whole deal was just.
Did you see Christian Pulisic is doing interviews in fluent Italian now that he's playing in Italy?
These guys annoy me. Like, this is like Maya Yoshida speaks like 17 different languages, and
he does.
I can barely do English, like just on the very outskirts of passable. Everybody here knows, but no, my whole thing is that Miki Amane is an amazing human being. I'm such a fan of him personally, right? Like just the man. And a lot of times you and I, we get to see a little bit closer. We get to see who these guys, who they are. I never know whenever they're talking to the press if they're putting on a good show or not. But I think for the most part, we can get a good feeling for Miki Amane. He's just an amazing person. But one of the things I don't think we counted on, Kevin, and I said this earlier this year already, is that Miki Amane had steps to take forward, right? We saw what he did last year. We're like, this is great. If he just does that, again, the LA Galaxy are going to be great. But Miki Amane has another gear, and I think we're seeing it even in the preseason. Whether that can translate across the entire season, good question, right? But right now, seeing what he was able to do, that's like a winner. You want to talk about a winner from Coachella? Miki Amane came out as a stone cold winner.
And I'm going to double down on that. I do think the attempt to do an interview in English, it minor point, not a big deal, but I do think it points to what you're seeing with him on the field. He's comfortable. He feels like he belongs. I mean, imagine any of you who out there have had a job where you had to go to another job. Maybe you had to move to a different state, maybe a different country, or maybe you just had to move down the street, but you come in and there's new rules, there's new workplace etiquette, there's your duties are different. Think about that. Miki Amane's coming to a new country, doesn't speak the language, playing with a new team in a new league, doesn't understand the system probably right at first. That's really difficult. And so you look at the year he had, and you kind of put that into context and say, now he's had an off season to think about it. He won a championship his first year. He knows everybody. He's beginning to pick up the language. He understands what's going on around him. He said his wife and he are both taking English classes. Their kid is going to school in English, and they're beginning to understand what's being said around them. It can't help but translate into success and comfort on the field where he's trying to play against world-class players.
Yeah, no, great. So I'm really high on that. I think Amiro Garces played really well in the preseason. I'm waiting for Maya Yoshida. I think that if you have any red lights or flashing lights that are sort of flashing at you, possibly Maya Yoshida, just the way the whole contract went down in the offseason and whether or not how motivated he is. I think he'll be fine whenever it all comes down to it, but he can't take large steps backwards for the Galaxy to struggle, and I think that's also why Zonka is around.
Well, and I think Zonka is going to play a lot, but I did ask if you saw the story I did on Maya Yoshida and his contract. He's extremely unhappy about it, and he told me that he's going to do less for the Galaxy this season, meaning he's not going to do less media. He takes the captain's role very seriously, and he'll talk to us whenever we ask him a question. But He's not going to go to supermarket openings or whatever else they have the players do. I did ask him that question, though, because I'm a hard-hitting journalist, as you know.
Right.
And I said, so you're unhappy with the Galaxy? You didn't get the contract you want? You didn't get rewarded for captaining the team to a championship? He played more minutes than anybody in MLS last year, and you didn't get a raise? And he said, I am always going to go out and give my best. I'm going to try the hardest. I don't think about the contract when I'm on the field. I think about the contract a lot off the field. But when I'm playing, I didn't think about the contract. He said, you will not see any difference in the way I play. I will play 100% every time. He said, that doesn't mean I'm not going to make mistakes, but it's not because of the contract that I make mistakes. So I'm going to take him at his word. He seemed like a very stand-up guy, and he said it's not going to affect him. That when he signed the contract, he's actually thankful to the Galaxy. He said, I could have got more money elsewhere,
right,
but I would have got just a year.
Right. And
he said, I've already taken my daughter was born in England. We took her to Italy. She was in Germany. Now she's here. I'm not going to do that to her. So he said, the Galaxy gave me less money, but they gave me a second year, and that meant everything to him, to be able to stay in one place with his daughter.
Yeah, no, I can understand it, certainly. Patrick, by the way, $10 super chat says, I make a mean date shake. I imagine that he's talking about, like, dates as in palms, like the date.
They're huge in Palm Springs. That's what he's talking about. They're a big deal out there.
My wife will get the dates, and they're delicious. I can only imagine. Patrick, I'm down. If you ever want to make me a date shake, I am in. If that means we have to go on a date, I'm in too. I don't even care. I'm gonna use all this for good, for the goodness of my my stomach here. So so I think it's really an interesting thing to look at the defense and sort of say, hey, this is what we see from the LA Galaxy. Again, the biggest issue, and I think somebody raised this, I'm not trying to steal anything, I just think it's a correct observation, which is the Galaxy playing out of the back is not going to be as comfortable as it was last year. And even last year, it wasn't always comfortable because Riqui Puig isn't there to sort of break it out and really go after it. So what happened in the Chicago game? Galaxy got caught in possession and they gave up an easy goal. Garces, Yoshida in there allowing too much space. And whenever you turn the ball over, you can't turn it over in bad spots. We know this. This is not hard to sort of pay attention to. So it's one of those things. It's one of those things that you can sort of pay attention and watch how the Galaxy play out of the back, and then we could move forward and sort of watch that.
You hit on something that's really, really important going into the first game. Last year, 3 of the top 8 players in the league in passing were on the Galaxy. Riqui Puig was number 1, Yoshida was 2 or 3,
right,
and Mark Delgado was number 8. Mark Delgado's no longer here. Ricky's hurt. That leaves Yoshida, and we know Yoshida was passing to those 2 guys, and they're not there. You can't just say with Riqui, okay, we're going to put another guy in that spot, Sanabria, whomever, and he's going to be the same as Riqui. He's not going to be. Or we're going to put another guy in Mark Delgado's spot. He's going to be the same. He's not going to be. These guys were special talents. Riqui still is a special talent for the Galaxy. Until he comes back, I think they're going to have to play a different way, and they're going to have to make adjustments because, again, you just can't say, you're not going to replace Riqui Puig with anybody else and say he's going to play the same way. He's not going to.
Right.
And so the Galaxy are going to have to find a different way to play, and maybe that affects the way they do or don't play out of the back.
By the way, Aaron, super chat, $5 super chat says both of your likely starting Galaxy lineups for Sunday, and then in 8 weeks when everyone is here and fit except for Riqui, of course. I think we've got your starting lineup, which is we believe it's going to be very much a mirror of what you saw this last game against Chicago. I'm interested to see how much Marco Royce plays because we saw his first minutes. He got his first 45 minutes of the preseason, at least in front of our eyes. So we saw that. How durable is he going to be? And if he can't play, then what happens in there? And right now, at least on the substitution lines, it was Elijah Winder coming in, and then Marco Royce in there as well. So Marco Royce out, Elijah Winder in, and we've been high on Winder, sort of watching what he's been doing. So again, I don't think it's crazy. Julian Aude, by the way, I was just reminded by LA Galaxy PR Kevin during the show that there is a whole SoundCloud file that has everybody's correct pronunciations for their team. I told them it would do absolutely zero good with you because you can't even pronounce Zlatan's name correctly. And
No, I'm not. I won't be listening to that. Sorry.
you wouldn't want that to throw you off having to say their names
Well,
correctly, right? Yeah.
I do. I would like to know how Mickey pronounces his last name, because Joe Totino insists it's Yamane.
Yes, I know, and I'm happy to be corrected, but I also I
think Yamane sounds better.
Of course you do. You American, just make sure they all sound like American names. So, just call him Mickey Smith, right? That whole thing. So
That would be good. Well, in that lineup, who do you take out? Do you take out Fagundes for Paintsil? Do you take out Royce and move Fagundes back? I mean, what do you do?
I mean, the only thing I see that changes whenever Paintsil comes back is that Fagundes comes out, and then Fagundes either runs into the Royce role or Royce pulls out, and you have Fagundes, and then Royce comes in off the bench again. So I think those are the only things that change. Seeing Sanabria there, and certainly I have to think in watching this, and it's just not clear to me on TV yet. I watched it a little in person, but I didn't sit on the sideline to really sort of watch if they're double pivoting, but it looks like a double pivot in the center there between sort of Cerrillo and Sanabria. And I'm interested again, first real minutes, and I say real in quotation marks for Sanabria as well. He megs somebody, he has the ability. I think he's going to get comfortable, but I imagine he starts. It looks like he's ready to go and starts. So I don't think they're going to side out there. I do think you're going to see some Elijah Winder early in this season, that he's going to come in off the bench and make a difference. Maybe some Ruben Ramos Jr., who I thought has played pretty well.
Played really well. Tucker Lepley as well.
Yeah, Tucker Lepley. So I think there's going to be some minutes for some of these guys in the first 8 weeks, as Aaron has sort of indicated here. And then whenever Joseph Paintsil goes back, it gets more crowded again, right? And if it's more crowded again, then I think you're going to see less minutes for some of these guys. But it was a whole bunch of a really interesting thing. And Aaron adds another $5 super chat. Shout out to Marvin, who I met at CVI. Plus, I had an earlier super chat, which I just read. So those were the things I wanted to make sure we got it.
But you're good about those. It's a good point about those minutes, because right now you have an opportunity that perhaps Nascimento's not ready for a lot of minutes. You have opportunity in the midfield. Maybe Royce is not ready. Sanabria is getting his feet wet a little bit. Paintsil's out. Getting these guys minutes now, I'm not saying sacrifice the result. I'm just saying get them on the field a little bit, because they're going to need to play. The Galaxy are going to have a lot of games. They have CONCACAF Champions Cup. They have Leagues Cup. They're going to have a lot of games to play. They're missing, a couple starters now. Getting these guys minutes now is much better than throwing them on the field 12 games in the season when they haven't played yet, and all of a sudden those minutes probably mean a little bit more at that point. I think getting them minutes now and getting them comfortable on the field is a plus, and it's an opportunity created by those injuries. You can look at the injuries and say, oh my gosh, that's terrible, we're never going to overcome these injuries. Or you can look at them as an opportunity. And I think Greg Vanney is looking at them as an opportunity.
What choice does Greg Vanney have? He can't sit there and cry because Riqui Puig ain't there, right? I mean,
no, but it's the way he approaches it.
Right.
He could say, oh my God, there's no way we can overcome this. I hope we can draw all these games until Riqui comes back. Or he can say, it's time for someone to step up.
Did the Galaxy have the Ted Lasso start, like in season 2, where they just drew all the games? Is that what the Galaxy are going to do to start this out? Because listen, upcoming game aside, there's some tough games, and there's going to be tough games. And the Galaxy, I think, have, as much as they are MLS Cup champions, and again, they get to live with that moniker the entire year. That's a different type of pressure that the Galaxy haven't had to live on since 2015, and none of these guys were on that team, right? So having to be defending MLS Cup champions is a lot of pressure, and you have to deal with it.
And remember the unbeaten streak at home. I think that's in the back of a lot of people's minds.
Would you like me to tell you which game it goes away on?
I don't think the first one.
No, I'm okay with that one, but I think Orlando will beat the LA Galaxy at home right now. That's what I'm saying. I just let's see if I'm right. But that's going to end this year. Zero chance the LA Galaxy. Zero chance. I want everybody to say it with me. Zero chance the LA Galaxy are undefeated at home again this season. It would be ridiculous to even say something like that. As ridiculous last year is sitting there saying LA Galaxy are going to win MLS Cup, sitting in the same position that you were at right now. However, Kevin, we are in a similar position. As I stated at the beginning of this podcast, we are in a similar position. The Galaxy have added pieces. We don't know how those pieces are. There's question marks at a bunch of different places. Where did the Galaxy go from here? How do they continue to evolve this team? And the only answer we have is that, Will Kuntz, with all the cooking he's done, believes that he got the right guy in Sanabria. Will Kuntz believes that, Nascimento is going to come in and, like you said, be the starter by the end of the year. Unlikely. But he's going to have to put in real minutes, going to have to put in real time. That Christian Ramirez that they brought in is going to be somebody who's, one, better than Miguel Berry, which I think he's going to be, and two, has sort of the effect. We have preached that you and I could put in goals for the LA Galaxy, which was a ridiculous statement on its fact. I understand that 100%. But with Paintsil, but with Pec, with Puig, that you and I could probably be good for at least 1 or 2 goals in the season.
Well,
right?
except I can't use my hands.
You're
There's
not
no
supposed
handballs.
to. You're not supposed to use your
That's
hands.
good.
Yeah.
But you made a good point about the Galaxy, the reigning champions. That means every city they go to this year, those teams are going to be hawking tickets. The reigning champions are coming. It's going to be in every headline, and every team is going to want to take out the Galaxy. It makes their season. If you're having a bad season, but you beat the Galaxy, it makes your season. You know what? The Red Bulls aren't going to have to face that. Nobody wants to beat the MLS Cup runner-up. No one even knows who that is. No one remembers that.
Right.
The Galaxy are the champions. Again, they're a big target on their back all season.
Interesting. Well, Adam actually asked $5 super chat, and keep those super chats coming, please. We want to answer your questions. This is ahead of the LA Galaxy kicking off against San Diego. You've got questions, we want to try to answer them. But Adam asked $5 super chat. Hey guys, have you went over where MLS pundits put the LA Galaxy for 2025? We have not. First of all,
we know that, but we know, you know that.
I do know it. I also would like to say this: that before we get to that, where do you, Kevin, think that the LA Galaxy should finish in 2025? Before we get to the pundits who so incorrectly guessed the LA Galaxy last year. By the way, totally, I was with them. They figured the Galaxy were going to finish 13th, 12th, 11th, 10th, somewhere in the Western Conference last year. Galaxy ended up finishing in second in the Western Conference and won an MLS Cup. Where do you feel now, the LA Galaxy?
I think that definitely in the playoffs. So there's no question about that. I think
Top
a
9.
home playoff game.
Okay, top 4.
Yeah, a home playoff game. So it's top 4. I think LAFC is going to be pretty good. I don't think they're going to be as good as they've been in the past, but they'll be up there. Seattle, I think, is going to be really good again. San Jose has an interesting team, and they got Bruce Arena. I don't think they're going to contend for the title, but I think they're going to be in the playoff hunt. I'm surprised to see so many people are really down on Vancouver. I don't know. Vancouver had a good season last year. I think Portland could be good. Real Salt Lake. I think Peter Vermees is probably going to lose his job during the season. I think Salt Lake's not going to be good. Poor Dejan Joveljic. The 3 Texas teams could be really interesting too. But you ask him about the Galaxy. I think I'm not going to pick a number, but I think definitely top 9, top 8. I think they're going to play in the playoffs, and I think a home playoff game. So I would say in the top 4 for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's anywhere between 2nd and 4th. If I was going to guess, I would probably, let's be overly optimistic and put them at 3rd in the Western Conference. I think the real telltale, though, is, again, I think it's crazy to say a team that scored so many goals last year is going to have an offensive question mark, and I think they have an offensive question mark right now. Just prove me wrong. Show me.
But let's think of this positively. Greg Vanney always talks about the real season starts in the last 10 games. He's really
He has said that. But last year, the LA Galaxy bucked that trend of worrying about what it was, and they went after the first. They were like, no,
right. He didn't say that because they were good.
Yes.
He didn't say that because they were good last season.
Right.
But he has talked about that in the past, and he's a believer, I think, in that momentum carries you into, when you take momentum into the playoffs, you're a better team. So let's look at that. Let's say Riqui comes back in August, maybe for Leagues Cup, and then he plays the last 7 or 8 regular season games to sort of get his chemistry back with his teammates. And let's say that Mateus by that time is now playing well, and as I think he will, takes over that striker spot. The Galaxy could go on, and Ricky's coming back in the middle of the season. He's not going to be exhausted. He's not going to be beat up like he was last year. I think the Galaxy could be a super dangerous playoff team if they get there in good shape and there aren't too many injuries. And then they add a guy like Riqui. That's like picking up a designated player at in the August window, and it's just going to make them a much better team.
Yeah. All right. So here's where the pundits finished on the LA Galaxy. Right now, they have them finishing as 3rd. LAFC, Seattle, LA Galaxy, Minnesota up there, Real Salt Lake, Austin, San Jose. San Jose making a huge jump, by the way, getting all the way up to 7th there.
I think that's a good call.
Houston in 8th, Colorado in 9th, Portland in 10th. Interesting to see where Portland is going to sort of move. I want to see more. St. Louis City, in 11th, Sporting Kansas City in 12th, FC Dallas in 13th, 14th is the Vancouver Whitecaps, and last in the Western Conference with 15 teams, remember 30 total teams, 15 in each, is San Diego FC.
I think that's a little optimistic for San Diego. I don't know if they're going to be that good.
I don't think they can't go any further than that, dude. That's it. That's unfortunately, that's where it is. Now, if you want to know where the pundits actually picked the LA Galaxy, I have that information as well. Ozzy Alonso picked them 4th in the conference. Matt Doyle picked them 3rd in the Western Conference. Miguel Gallardo 3rd in Western Conference. It's Michaeli Giannoni. I can never say his name correctly. 3rd in the Western Conference. Antonella Gonzalez, 5th in the Western Conference. Sasha Kleshin, 4th in the Western Conference. Kalen Kyle, 3rd. Dax McCarty, 5th. And Bradley Wright Phillips, 3rd.
No one picked them above 3rd. No seconds, no first.
No. Is what it is, right? It's a safe... it's safe to say the LA Galaxy are 3rd or 4th in the Western Conference. It's at 100%. It's not even... You didn't have to watch any of the preseason. You didn't have to watch anything to say, oh, well, the LA Galaxy are going to be 3rd and 4th. I was talking to one of our listeners today. Actually went out to lunch with one of our listeners today. We were having a discussion, and he pointed out, he says, Matt Doyle said all this time that the LA Galaxy aren't good, and then he comes in and basically says, oh, by the way, the Galaxy will be fine without Riqui Puig. Is that, well, my argument is this. They should have been probably an MLS Cup contender in 2023, but because of the boycott, because of the injuries, that never happened. It never took off. So then they're at the end and the close of the window in 2024, and they pull it off, and now you're sort of in this a little bit, and it's not rebuilding because it's MLS. Every year is rebuilding. You're moving pieces around. You're doing stuff, doing that, and now all of a sudden they're solid. I feel like the LA Galaxy are a lot more unstable than people will give them credit for right now. I just think they're volatile. I can see this team being in 1st in the Western Conference again for most of the year if they just sort of keep plodding along the way that they were. I could also see them struggling in their first, 10 games, 12 games to sort of figure this out and figure out how to play without Riqui Puig. And again, that's a huge hole. You're going to miss a designated player for 3/4 of the season more than likely. We talk about your designated players having to play. Riqui Puig is not going to play for 3/4 of this season. And that's optimistically 3/4. He comes back the last month of the season, plays 3 or 4 games, and they go into the playoffs. That's a huge hole for them. So again, volatile for me.
I thought the Galaxy were really good last season when Riqui stopped trying to do everything, when he started realizing how good Pec and Paintsil were. And he didn't know that at the beginning. If you remember the first few games, I thought Riqui was doing his Stephen Curry thing, shooting from downtown and just trying to make things happen. And once he relaxed and let his talent take over, they got to be really good. I really believe that if he comes back healthy in August, maybe September is a little bit too late, but he's going to give them a real boost going into the playoffs. Another thing to watch is what goes on in goal, though. I mean, that's kind of like the catcher of your team. He's the guy that sees everything in front of him. He's the guy that kind of calls out the signals and organizes things. For a young goalkeeper starting at this level for the first time, that could be difficult. I think we could see some problems in the back, some mix-ups in the back line, and some uncertainty back there. I think that's something worth watching too. I know you're going to talk on Thursday about the game, but I do think this game could be interesting. I don't think San Diego's really I don't think they're going to put up much of a fight. I saw them in the preseason. They didn't look good, but seeing Chucky Lozano, Luca De La Torre, and Ima Boateng, they could be fun to watch. I don't know how competitive they're going to be. And I think there'll be a lot of Galaxy fans cheering for Chucky Lozano, at least at the start.
I don't think so. I think you grossly overestimate the ability of people to be like, oh yeah, there's a whole deal. I mean, whenever Messi played, there were Messi fans in the building cheering for Messi. But it's not
Chucky Lozano and Messi are not the same.
I 100% not. I 100. I think Chucky would say the same thing. By the way, I don't think that's a bad take. But no.
By the way, why they have a stadium? I get the LAFC. They played all their games on the road. When they didn't have a stadium, the Galaxy did in 2003 as well. But you have an exhibition or an expansion team. Everyone's excited.
You know why?
Why do they open on the road?
You build the excitement so that way whenever they come home. Okay. So you get them that first week and they're like, oh man, I can't wait to go to the game. The whole thing. Here's the crazy thing is, if you didn't see San Diego, if you watched San Diego in preseason and you saw all the games except for the last game, you'd be like, these guys are not going to be good. And then they went and threw a 6th spot on New York Red Bull, and you're like, And now there's a little creeping it down. I mean, if Ima Boateng's banging in the goals for you, something happened. And I think I'm with you, which is New York was I think New York was playing under the do not get hurt in this game, like sort of thing. And I think San Diego was sort of playing like, this is your last chance to go before the game starts. You guys don't know how to play like real competitive. Treat this like a game. You guys are not a team yet. This is your team building. Treat this like a real game. And I think that's the difference. And in those, that 5 to 10% difference in effort is a big thing in Major League Soccer. And New York was like, as long as nobody's hurt, we're getting on the plane, we're leaving. So, yeah, that's where I think that is. We are going to talk about it on Thursday, so it's not something I need to super dive into. But I thought everybody had sort of pegged San Diego correctly, which was the roster didn't look super crazy interesting or really like it was going to be super successful. And having said that, you watch them put 6 on New York and you're like, okay, maybe there's something there. So I think it's got people at least thinking a little bit. And I think it should worry the LA Galaxy. Galaxy didn't score a whole bunch of goals. Can't let San Diego score 2 on you. You're not going to score more than that. You're not going to win that game. So that's sort of where I sit with that. I think
it's a really interesting matchup. It's like San Diego's playing with house money. Yeah. If they beat the reigning MLS champs in their first game,
right?
Wow. And if they don't, they're not supposed to.
They're not supposed to, 100%. Just to give you a heads up, and I think we've talked about this before, but if you want like your coffee with a little bit of MLS Cup in it, from Honey Greens Cafe in Downey from Monday, February 17th to Sunday, February 23rd, for a limited time offering of MLS Cup and Galaxy-inspired coffee and matcha drinks. You can head on over to Honey Greens Cafe in Downey. Could they do a picture?
You pay extra for that?
Could they do a picture of you and me on? Can we get the panda and pato on your coffee? But then you wouldn't be able to drink it. 1, it would be a work of art.
No.
2, you'd probably want to expel that.
You'd
coffee.
be sick. Yeah,
Yes,
you'd be sick.
Okay, just checking. That was good. I'm glad we talked that one through. Just a reminder for LA Galaxy fans: if you look at all of the champions for the MLS since the league started in 1996, you see a lot of LA Galaxy in there. 6-time MLS Cup champion LA Galaxy, winning in 2002, 2005, 11, 12, 14, and 2024. So a lot of things in there. Also a lot of DC United, as we know. So always interesting that. The Houston back-to-backs. I'm sort of looking at this going, who's gone back-to-back? You had back-to-back DC United. DC United winning 3 out of 4. Only other team to do that, the LA Galaxy, 3 out of 4. From 2011 to 2014. But you had back-to-back for United in 96 and 97. Then you can go into the Houston days in 2006, 2007, having won those back-to-back. And really, that was a San Jose team in Houston. So you look at 2003 as a San Jose winning, and then 2006, 2007, they had some good teams in there, that type of thing. And then the last back-to-back champions are the LA Galaxy in 2011 and 2012. So has not been done.
Here's another way to look at that. DC United won those first 2 titles under Bruce Arena, who later became the Galaxy coach. Yep. Houston won its 2 titles under Dominic Kinnear, later became a Galaxy assistant. Uh-huh. Toronto won its title under Greg Vanney, now the Galaxy coach, and was a original Galaxy player. A lot of Galaxy connections with all these MLS Cup championships.
Well, yeah, I mean, there always is. It's the coaching tree, right? The coaching tree that spreads out. I mean, you look at, Greg Berhalter. Berhalter's a Bruce disciple, right? You can sort of go Pat Noonan, Bruce. I would hate to say Kenny Arena, also a Bruce guy. Dave Sarakin, Bruce. And then you can look at everybody who spins off of that and goes in their different directions. There's Siggy Schmidt. Levels of that tree.
2002.
Yep. There's Bob
2000,
Bradley.
And he won 2008 as well, 2002 and 2008.
Yeah. So you can see those branches sort of, coming off and doing that. One of the last things certainly I wanted to talk about was in CONCACAF Champions Cup. I didn't get it to earlier because we were sort of talking about the LA Galaxy, but they had people predict where the of the MLS teams, how likely is it the LA Galaxy win CONCACAF Champions Cup? And this is just, by the way, they put them in the 5th place. I just want you to know this because this is my good friend Charles Bohm, and Charles is an amazing thinker. I always trust what he like when he writes it. You should read it and trust it because the guy really knows what he's talking about whenever it comes to soccer. But Charles wrote down, if only the G's could defy time, space, and MLS roster rules and magically transport the squad that marched through last year's playoffs to claim their 6th MLS Cup trophy in CONCACAF Champions 25, we'd surely rank them higher on this list. Alas, in the cold, hard reality, Maestro Riqui Puig is just a couple of months into a lengthy ACL rehab. Dejan Jovalic, Mark Delgado, Gaston Brugman are wearing other teams' colors due to offseason salary budget maneuvering. And on top of all that, versatile attacker Joseph Paintsil is reportedly out for several weeks with a quad injury. Ample talent remains, starting with Gabriel Pec and Marco Reus, newly acquired Christian Ramirez, who played a key role in Columbus's 2024 run, but charting a course through that probably treacherous lower left corner of the bracket is asking a lot of a team, remaking itself on the fly. That is how you should think of the LA Galaxy right now. There is nothing set.
So how far do they go?
I don't know that they make it out of the first round past RSL or Herediano. I have no idea. If it's Herediano, I think it's a lot more difficult. I also want to see how they play. Because I be honest with you, I haven't seen Herediano play. If they're good enough to beat RSL right now, and RSL sort of, starts their season early this year too, and we can watch them play, I really want to see how they play. Those teams may be bad enough that the LA Galaxy can get by them and it's not an issue. Having said that, I don't think you should take any game in CONCACAF Champions Cup lightly, because I think the LA Galaxy are learning how to play. And I think they're going to learn how to play through the first, quarter of this season without Riqui and, somewhat without Joseph Paintsil as well. How do they play? How do they create goals? How do they score? Those are my questions.
That is a kind of sad commentary that the Galaxy would be contenders if they had their team, but they don't, and the injuries make it even worse. By the way, Mexican teams have won 17 of the last 18 CONCACAF Cup champions,
Right.
Whatever you want to call it. Seattle is the only one, an MLS team to interrupt that. But only 2 teams in MLS history have played in 2 CONCACAF finals. You know who the 2 teams are?
No, I don't. I'm just going to say no, and then you can tell me.
The Galaxy won and lost one, and I think the win was in '97, so last century. And the other team is LAFC, who's played in 2 in the last 6 seasons and lost both.
Right. So, by the way, I was on a podcast and they were previewing, and they're like, does it hurt for the Galaxy not to be in the Club World Cup this year? Because I'm like, that's kind of Galaxy lore, isn't it? That the one year the Galaxy did win and we're going to go to the Club World Cup, it got canceled. And then this year, inexplicably, FIFA just decides to take Miami as the Supporter Shield winners instead of the MLS Cup winner, who has always really gone to that tournament.
It is explicable. It's not inexplicable.
Oh, that's
it's
right. It's
explicable.
explicable. It's because Messi.
Yeah, Messi. Exactly.
I know you're not wrong. That is a correct take. 100%. I'm still.
But it's disappointing because the Galaxy earned it. They're the champions. Sorry.
They did. That's what we do in this league, right? It's after the playoffs. It's not about Supporter Shield. Nobody cares that you won Supporter Shields. The only people who claim Supporter Shield is people who haven't won MLS Cups. It's really cool.
Oh, next year it's going to be, they won the Coachella Valley Invitational. They're in the Club World Cup.
That's right. 100%. Well, I can see that. So you're going to make me laugh, and I've done so well. One last thing I wanted to get to before we get out of here. Men in Blazers.
There it is.
Doing a live show in LA. Join Raj to relive every moment of the history-making 2024 LA Galaxy season this Friday at 7:30 Pacific Time. Tickets are live now, and all proceeds will be donated to the LA Fire Department Foundation, which is awesome. Tickets are $30 from what I can tell. I don't know. There's also fees. Oh no, that's with fees. So $20.74 plus $9.25 in fees at $29. AXS has them. Access tickets, same place you get your Galaxy tickets, has that.
And there's going to be some Galaxy players. I think Marco Reus is one that's going to be there. And by the way, I think it should be Man and Blazer, because I don't think Davo does the show anymore. I think it's just Raj.
No, I mean, hey, whatever they want to do. My big reason for promoting it, obviously, is because of the Galaxy certainly centric focus that's going to happen. It's a great way to start the weekend whenever you have a game on Sunday. So a good way to sort of cheer those things on. And then the other part is that all that money's going to a good foundation. So go out there, get your tickets, do your thing. As of right now, I don't think I'm attending, but perhaps, maybe if somebody twists my arm, maybe I can break away from watching the kid that night and go hang out with everybody. So that's what we got. Kevin, anything else that you want to talk about before? This is it. The league starts this week. We have CONCACAF Champions Cups games that are going on. The Galaxy aren't interested in those. You have to watch them if you're a Galaxy fan, though, so you know which teams are coming up. Is there anything that do you have a feeling about this team? Is there anything that you have learned over this preseason that makes you believe something or not? Whether that's
there's just a lot of questions, and we had a lot of questions at this point last year. So questions aren't necessarily bad. I want to see how the goalkeeping situation shakes out, because it could go south pretty quick, or it could be a great move. I want to see how the midfield works out. I want to see how fit Marco Reus is. I want to see if Christian Ramirez can recapture some of that magic. I think he's got the quality to do it. I'd like to see me learn how to say a lot of these names. That would be helpful. We'll work on that. And I am kind of, a lot of question marks about the Galaxy, and we may not know for a month or two, just like we did in last year.
Right.
Remember in August and September, we were talking about, this team, maybe one playoff game at home and that'll be great. And they ran the table. I am kind of excited to see San Diego. Again, I don't think they're going to be a good team. They don't look like they're put together very well, but Luca De La Torre and Chucky Lozano and then Ima Boateng coming off the bench, they could be kind of fun to watch.
There's something we haven't talked about, and surprisingly, I can't believe the chat room hasn't brought it up. Maybe I did a good enough job of squashing rumors so that everybody's sort of simmered down now. But Gabriel Pec, and there was an Atletico Madrid rumor out there. I was able to talk to a source, and basically, I was the first person to tell this person about that rumor. So they're always interested whenever that happens. Never heard of that rumor. Very interesting. Tell me more. The one thing I will say about Gabriel Pec is this. And I believe that this is the view the LA Galaxy certainly are sharing, at least internally, is that if Gabriel Pec continues to play the way that he's playing, he's going to reach the top levels of soccer in this world. And there's nothing the LA Galaxy can do to really stop that because he's a talent. It's one of the reasons they went out to get him. And they plan on moving him. That is, it's in the plan, right? You buy a young talent like this, you go out, you get him as a young designated player, you pay the money, and eventually you want that payoff. Now, I think Galaxy fans are hoping that payoff comes in like 2 to 3 years, and I really think the Galaxy are probably looking in the next 12 to 24 months for Gabriel Pec. Eventually, when Gabriel Pec wants to go and the LA Galaxy think they're getting value out of Gabriel Pec, that they want, the money that they want, I think he's going to go. And that I can't say he's not going to move right now. I don't believe that that's the case. You can always say it's not going to happen, Kevin, until somebody comes up and says, hey, so do you want $30 million for Gabriel Pec? And then Gabriel Pec's on a plane and he's gone. It's one of those things. I will say this, the Atletico Madrid rumor was rumored to be like 18 million. And I don't think, having talked to people about Gabriel Pec, I think the number is higher than that they want. So I don't think that 18 million is realistic for what they think they can get for Gabriel Pec. I think they want more than that.
I think he's here through at least August because the European window is closed. I don't think he's going south. I don't think he's going to Mexico or Brazil. I think he's going to Europe. He wants to go to Europe.
Brazil,
and if he does,
Brazil is one of the rumors, though. Palmeiras apparently is one of the clubs that is perhaps interested in Gabriel Pec. If he wanted to go and the money was there, I'm just saying it wouldn't be crazy. But yes, continue. Sorry.
I'm not so sure that Gabriel Pec wants to go back to Brazil, and I'm not saying he has bad feelings. I think he wants to play in Europe. He told me that last year, and one of the things that he's going to do is he's going to give Greg Vanney a little bit of that money that he gets, and maybe Will Kuntz too, because he played a different role in Vasco da Gama. He was a different player. Greg Vanney and Juninho changed the way he plays here, made him much more dynamic, pushed him way out on the wing. Made him a different player, and got him to cut into the box. And he's a much better player, a much more dangerous player. And it was because Vanney and Juninho saw something in him that Vasco didn't see, and he played a different way. But he did say that he thought, he wanted to go from Brazil to Europe. And he said, if I had gone before I went to MLS, I'd be sitting on the bench somewhere, and I'd never be I'd never be an impact player. Greg Vanney showed that I can be that. And I do want to go to Europe, and I want to be that guy who starts for some team in the Premier League or La Liga. So I just think that his mind right now, I think if he feels like if he goes back to Brazil, he's going to be stuck there for a while. His goal is Europe. That's where he wants to go. He's 23 now. That's not old, but it's not young anymore. And so I think that's where he winds up. I think that's where he wants to go. He's been to Brazil. He's played there, been there, done that. Bought the T-shirt, doesn't want to go back.
But there could be a lot of money. There could be a lot of money to go back to Brazil. He's Brazilian. He would enjoy that, right? Like there's not you can never say no. I'm just saying I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the Galaxy think it's going to happen in this window. But again, if the conditions are met, and those conditions are he wants to go, and the Galaxy think they're getting their value, he'll go. That's it.
I am surprised that a lot of the players that showed that they were really good players in MLS, you would think that they all are motivated to go to Europe, and maybe that's past. Maybe it's just all about the paycheck and where they're going to play. But you've seen a lot of players, Mateus Bogus going down to play in Mexico, and you had Jesus Murillo went down, but went back to South America. A lot of guys going south as opposed to going east across the pond. I'm a little bit surprised. And I mean, I know there are some players that's their limit, that they're
Right.
not going to go start at Arsenal. But some of these other guys, Bogus, is a really useful player. And Christian Oliveira, these are all LAFC guys that LAFC didn't get a chance to bring back many of their players either. I'm just surprised at the number of guys who have proven themselves in MLS wind up going south as opposed to east.
Well, look at Joveljic as well. I mean, you would think that he would be able to go back to Europe and find a place there. I think it's interesting that he wanted to stay and was good with staying in the United States. Had a chance possibly to go down to Mexico, but that changed last minute and you have to imagine he okayed the deal to go to KC as well. So you look at all those things and you're like, okay, there seems to be a market here in MLS for some guys. Outside of Gabriel Pec, one of the big things is Riqui Puig and whether he was going to go back to Europe. With his injury now, Kevin, he probably doesn't have the option to go back to Europe in the time frame that he maybe thought. The injury could end up keeping Riqui Puig in MLS as a MLS lifer. And if that's the case, he could be one of the greatest MLS players to ever play. I mean, really could if he sticks here for another 5-6 years. But you have to imagine that once he's able to prove himself that he comes back from the injury, and he has to do that, that perhaps there's one final chance for him to go to Europe at his age and go play somewhere. And then that's going to be it. Maybe he ends his career back in MLS after 2 or 3 years in Europe. But I think that window on Riqui Puig is closing really fast, which the injury could have altered the timeline of his career drastically. I think David Goss, and I don't know if it made the podcast that when we were doing it, but whether we were talking about it beforehand or during the podcast, I can never remember how it goes. But David and I were talking about just that the injury could alter things. Timing matters. Gabriel Pec doesn't go now. Maybe he goes in the summer. Maybe he goes in the next winter. Maybe something happens to where none of that, he wants to stay in the United States and he never wants to go. All those things can change and move and make different things. But right now, with Gabriel Pec, I think the Galaxy are expecting him to at least be here for this first half of the window. And, we'll see what happens in the summertime. If he plays as well as he did last year, he's not going to stay in Major League Soccer for very much longer. And the LA Galaxy are counting on that.
I think there's some questions about both those guys. Really, I think Gabriel Pec, as good as he is, and I'm not saying there's much doubt in him, but I do think there were probably a few eyebrows raised when he was taken out of the mix sort of in the playoffs, when he wasn't as effective because of the way teams defensed him, and he didn't adjust to that. And I think some European teams are saying, look, you come out of the Premier League and this is how it's going to be every week, and you got to make adjustments, and we didn't see you make adjustments. We're going to give you another 6 months or a year. We're still like you, but we want to see whether you can make the adjustment. And I think you're absolutely right with Riqui. It's at least another season because they're going to want to see him play a full year.
Yeah, that's not. I was going to say it's not just this year. It's next season that he needs.
Yeah,
to
they're
play.
going to want to see him. And we have seen players, Miguel Almiron, Josef Martinez, Luca De La Torre coming back from Europe. We've seen players go to Europe and come back.
Yep.
For a number of different reasons. And it could be some people say, well, they're not good enough. I don't think I think they've all proven they're good enough. Sometimes I don't want to play 20 minutes a week. I want to play. Now I want to be the big fish in the little pond. I'm happy being the big fish in the little pond. I want to come back to MLS and play every week.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. We focus so often, I think, on the successes of the sport, right? And Kevin, you and I are in a unique position, and fans, if you really pay attention, you're in a unique position to capture all of it. You're capture the failures and the successes. Talk about the guys who never got a chance to play because the guy in front of them was really good. That guy could be like the second best player at that position, but never got a chance, right? You have to get the chance. There's luck that has to be on your side, and you have to be a good player. All of these things come into play, but there will be failures this season. I mean, just looking at what a tough road perhaps somebody like John McCarthy has traveled throughout his career to now be once again at the number 2 position, and again won an MLS Cup last year. So there are successes and failures every year. There are ups and downs. This is a business. People are here to make money. And so the LA Galaxy looking at Riqui Puig, looking at Gabriel Pec, is that they expect eventually they're going to sell him for a whole bunch of money, and that's going to finance the next group of players that they go out and try to go. So that was the whole idea that Will Kuntz pitched to Phil Anschutz was, give me this money now. I'm not coming back here for money all the time. I'm going to finance a lot of our stuff through the sale of these players. So I'm going to get this right. I'm going to sell these players, and then we're going to make this sort of more sustainable, getting the big players, spending the money, but investing in the younger youth. That way we can then sell them and bring in more good players. So,
Well, yeah, and you're right about. I mean, the Yankees had a AAA shortstop for 14 years because Derek Jeter was the guy on the big club, and the other guy. You could be the second best shortstop in baseball, and you're not going to get to play in the major leagues.
never get to play. That's 100%. So, all right, that's what we got. Anything else? We good?
Nope.
Okay.
Let's go.
Let's do it. Absolutely. All right. If you're looking for Mr.
Season 17.
Yeah, season 17. Here we go. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on all the socials at KBaxter11, head on over to latimes.com. I think you had a NASCAR article. Like, you write all the stuff, hockey, all that fun stuff. Go follow Kevin, latimes.com. And as always, we're appreciative of him here at Corner of the Galaxy from the Box. Second most show appearances, I think, out of everybody except for me. So he's doing a great job. All right. If you're looking for me on socials at Galaxy Podcast, cornerofthegalaxy.com, where you can find all those shows. Go subscribe to YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Google Play, all those fun places where you can find this podcast. You can find us. Any of those places, type in Corner of the Galaxy. Tell your friends, tell your family. We are ready for Season 17. LA Galaxy getting ready to take on San Diego for the first game of the season coming up on Sunday at Divinity Health Sports Park. We'll be back on Thursday to get you ready for that game. For Mr. Kevin, the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman, and you've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.